Hello, it's Hayden Williams here, and it's another episode of the Man in the Mirror podcast. It's a podcast where each week I talk to a male guest about life, about their work, and about some of those key items in their bathroom cabinets, those things that they can't do without. They might be the things that they take around with them in a toilet bag, those essentials, and they tell me and you about them. And there might be some things that you want to take into your routine. This week, I think, is a really special one. It's someone that I've admired for a long time and was thrilled to get the opportunity to talk to. It's David Seth Moltz from D.S and Durga, who are a Brooklyn-based niche perfumery brand. Unusual, I think, insofar as they're sort of perfumer-owned. It's David and his wife, Kavi. She looks after the sort of design, aesthetic side of things, and David himself is the perfumer, which is quite unusual, really. There's often a sort of founder of a business, as people I've spoken to on Man in the Mirror, actually, who are interpreters, if you like, the creative direction of it, but they'll still have to deal with an actual perfumer to bring their visions to life. Whereas in the case of D.S and Durga, the ideas and the perfume itself comes from the founder, David. So he's a really interesting guy, has a background in music. It's a very cool brand. You might know some of their fragrances. So here we go. It's David Seth Moltz. I'm Hayden Williams, and it's Man in the Mirror. Hi, welcome along to another episode of Man in the Mirror. And this week, I'm really, really happy to tell you I'm joined by David Seth Moltz from D.S and Durga. Hi, David. How are you?
Good. How you doing?
I'm really good, and I really appreciate you doing this. I know you're a very busy guy, and it's morning. Are you in Brooklyn? Are you
I
in
also
the
have
office?
to say thank you for accommodating the time stuff.
Oh, God.
Yes,
No,
I'm in Brooklyn. I'm in Brooklyn, New York, in the Navy Yards.
Right. And is the office and is the shop there, or is the shop somewhere else?
No, we have two stores, one in the city in Nolita and one in Williamsburg. And the Williamsburg store is probably a 10-minute drive from here.
Right. I was really keen. It's the first sort of perfumer that I've had on Man in the Mirror. I've talked to lots of founders of businesses and journalists and all sorts of people connected with the world of fragrance and beauty and skincare and all those things. But actually, it's a real privilege to have a perfumer on. And
there's not that many, right? There's about
there's
400
not.
people.
There's not that. There's not
there's
that many.
400 perfumers who make 90% of the things in the world.
Wow. And I think maybe if some of the listeners aren't aware, it's even more special because it feels like a lot of the perfumers and the noses are kind of concentrated into these big fragrance houses, and they're often down in France, and it feels like a kind of a sort of club and a sort of rarefied group of people. Yet you exist really successfully out of that world, and I said in the intro about your background in music and as a musician, but it'd be great to find out how that trajectory works and how you found yourself on this path of fragrance and actually sort of not just having an interest and kind of directing other people to create your visions.
I got to get my hands dirty, right? So
how did that happen?
It starts with just who I am as far as. I think I could figure out like any artistic discipline. So Kavi and I, my wife, we were going away in our relationship and like sort of going into used bookstores and just finding all these old like manuals about herbals and plants. And I didn't know why I was so interested in it. I was definitely interested in the herbs and things growing out of the sidewalks around me in New York. Wanted to find out about the plants.
Uh-huh.
Then I saw all these recipes for things and started making toners and all these kinds of things. And I realized that it was actually the fragrance was the most interesting portion for me. So I started getting a bunch of oils and making things. Didn't really think too much of it. This was December of 2007. Made a bunch of gifts for people for like Christmas, and they all really liked it. Kavi was an architect and worked in an architecture studio, and she said, why don't we just start a business? Why don't you make this and I'll make crazy labels for it? And we did, and it took off. Within 3 months we were selling in a store, then people wrote about it, and we quit our jobs within a year. And we realized, we didn't know anything about perfume or the perfume business or business at all. We had to learn as we went. And, I put my 10,000 hours in figuring out how to make it all make sense in my own language. And we were able to transition. I was a musician, wanting to write about certain things in music. I could transition those ideas into fragrance. And Kavi was an architect and could transition her architectural design into product design. And it really took off.
So you found this kind of perfect vehicle that you could create your, use your different artistic disciplines, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, right? I think fragrance is an art form that's equal to poetry, music, literature, visual arts. You can say the same amount of, deep emotive ideas and stories aromatically as you can with music or with words.
Yeah.
And, this is something I'm passionate about pushing, more into the collective conscious is just this idea that perfume can be a vehicle for great ideas. It's not just a accessory to fashion. It's not just about smelling good. It's really about the ideas. And you don't really hear about that as much because the perfumer is lost behind the company and the brand so often. There's very few perfume brands where the perfumer's voice is heard. And so all of the words you see, all the names and stories, that is all me. So I can talk about what I'm doing, and there's a clear concept from the creator in the final product. In a lot of brands, it's not to say ours is better for this. It's just that it's the vision from the perfumer is clearer than most brands. Because of that, usually you'd have a creative director or someone with ideas go to a fragrance house and say, "Oh, I want to make something that smells like a trip I had to Turkey when I was, 13." Well, maybe that perfumer's never been to Turkey. They don't know what it's like or anything, and so then they start just going off of what they think that person experienced. Well, for me, I actually experienced it, so I can make my version of what I was there and smelled, and
And I think that that definitely comes across in D.S and Durga perfumes and home fragrance, and it's really interesting. It feels like that's the sort of the shortest journey from your visions and your creativity to the end consumer. And like you say, often there's a ton of different people in the way. And I'm just, I work in music elsewhere as well, and I find it endlessly fascinating when there's people that kind of work in these different, creative arts, but somehow bring it all together. And it's surprising to me. Well, it's not surprising, but how often those same kind of disciplines are used, and you're using the same muscles. I mean, you're obviously someone that is interested in art and music and literature just as much as perfume, and just finding a way to present
it's
it.
Just variables, right? It's just different languages saying the same thing. Look, we already live in a universal, like an illusionary world, like scientifically, spiritually speaking. We live in this illusionary space, and we're all sort of playing with dad's stuff, like making cool like versions and stories ourselves. It's why we're attracted to fantasy. It's why we're attracted to adventure, because our life is a mystery and an adventure and a fantasy. And so I think playing with different variables that you're given, whether they'll be instruments or be aromatic materials or paint colors or words, it doesn't matter. It's just using different languages to transmit the same kind of ideas. And I'm very comfortable cooking a dish that's based upon a perfume, or writing a poem about a song, or any of that kind of stuff.
And the great thing with perfume as well, obviously, you've got the opportunity with Kavi it's not only an olfactory thing. There's something beautiful to look at. There's a playlist you can check out. There's these different sort of touch points.
Yeah, the 360 thing is important to me, to be able to make. So I make all those playlists. Each one perfume is like its own little world that you can get lost in. There's the name and the notes, but then inside there's the liner notes where I really talk more about it. There's a playlist, there's images, sometimes there's movies. There are all these little worlds that you can enter, because it's kind of like wearing like an adventure story on your skin that you can dip back into throughout the day. It's like it's like, I think the easiest way to change like the mood of something is to change the fragrance or put on different music. If we start listening to like Dixieland jazz right now, boom, the mood is created right then and there. Not everything works so quickly like visual art or something, but I think fragrance and music are invisible, and you can really, well, the one thing about perfume versus music is I always say, like, in music, if I want to make something that tries to smell like, second century BC Mesopotamia, it's still going to sound like a white guy from America that like grew up playing the blues. I can't pretend like I sound like that. But fragrance, the artist can really hide behind it. I could make something that smells like second century BC Mesopotamia, and you don't know who made it.
You don't know it's you. Yeah. And I think, we're talking about the different art forms as well. And really, I suppose you could think of it like, walking around a museum or a gallery. Like, if people want to take stuff and stand there for 20 minutes and really absorb the art, you can do that with perfume, and you can do that with the different touch points, but you don't have to. There's just as much enjoyment in the thing itself, but I guess you're offering up these different layers and these different places to go and check out if you want to. That can enhance, but it doesn't have to.
Totally. And that I think that's very important, is that it does not become didactic, where like you got to do it like this, because look at a record, right?
Enjoy it like this.
Yeah, look at the format of a record compared to an MP3 or even like a CD or a tape. A record is big, so it's visually like arresting. Like, there's a lot to look at. You put that record on, you listen to the music, you could just walk away. It doesn't matter. But usually inside there's liner notes, where, especially in classical music, it's often someone writing about sometimes it's the conductor writing about the composer, who they were, why they made this piece of music, and a little bit about what's going on in it. And it really enriches the experience, right? Because you're like, now you have someone talking about what you're listening to, and you'll forever color your understanding of this invisible thing that doesn't need words to convey messages.
Oh, absolutely. And when you were talking about how you got into, these sort of homemade fragrances with your wife, Kavi, further back than that, were you someone that was, going through the duty free and going, that's a really interesting fragrance? Like, were you someone that was interested in fragrance anyway, or was it more just sort of getting under the bonnet of something and fixing things, making
not
things?
At the duty free. That's funny. Definitely not at the duty free. But
Fahrenheit at the duty free.
I do love fragrance. Growing up, I won a bottle of perfume when I was 6 years old at a camp raffle, a bottle of Pierre Cardin, and that started the journey for me. And I was really obsessed with the first polo in the green bottle with the gold cap. I always liked wearing fragrance. And then, like different fragrances, because at that time you'd like wear one for a year or something. They definitely defined like times in my life. I was really into the 90s ones, and then I wore a Comme des Garçons too. And when I came to New York, never thought I'd be in perfume, but I knew that I loved it, and that there was this magical little world inside of it. And I, at some point, bought some oils and tried to like mess around and make my own thing, and it didn't last, and I didn't understand why. So when I went back to it to figure that out was a journey. I got really into bay rum, and I was like, I'm going to make my own bay rum. And I bought bay leaves and rum and stuff and spices and made it, and it smelled cool, but it lasted like, 2 minutes. So to try to figure out like how to actually make a real bay rum, was one of the first sort of impetuses of me making things, to be honest.
But you're obviously someone that can kind of get down into the reeds and the rushes and stuff and work things out, right?
Oh yeah. You gotta go deep and figure those things out. And I do think the jury's out. I'm writing a book that hopefully would be able to like explain a little bit of like what perfume is and how to make it. I feel like you could train like anyone, but you have to be someone who's good at like observing things and really picking them apart. So I definitely have that in the nose, like where I can smell something and really understand what's going on in there. And it's a layered thing where you don't always smell. Like, I'll give one example. Really nice pine oil from like let's say the Italian, there's an Italian pine, or like from the Tyrolean Alps that smells really beautiful. Mm-hmm. There's a note in there that's very different from a lot of other ones. And, there's a lot of conifers, and they really, it's hard to tell the difference between a lot of conifers, and the smells really overlap. Like, not everyone can tell the difference between spruce and fir, they can be very close. But Italian dwarf pine and some of the fancier ones, the Tyrolean stuff, it has a note in there that took me like a long time to figure out. And lo and behold, really, it's mushroom alcohol. It's this smell that matsutake mushrooms gives them their earthy smell. And if you think about it, it makes complete sense, right? Because those mushrooms literally grow on pine trees.
In the ground, yeah.
Yeah. And so that's where you get an idea of like, oh, okay. So now when you take, some of like your pine extracts, your pine oils, the building blocks of like the terpenes that make it smell like pine, you add in this mushroom alcohol and boom, you start to be in the realm of having really beautiful pine oil that's hard to get.
Yeah. Is that something that's in, because I really love Free Trapper. Is that obviously
Free Trapper does not have that, but I think there was Italian dwarf pine in that. That is a discontinued fragrance, but
is it?
We don't make it anymore. Yeah.
Oh, I've still got about 20 mil, and I love it.
Okay. Yeah, you gotta. It's been gone for like 2 years, I think.
Has it?
So yeah, and there's definitely the good pine oil in there, but that's one of the magic things about perfumery is some people think totally in terms of like naturals, and they're like, well, does this have like real like pine oil in it? The magical thing about perfume is if you know what you're doing, you can make something smell like a real beautiful pine tree in how it smells in real life with no pine oil. I mean, pine's one where you're going to probably use some real pine, but that's the magic of perfumery, is that you're able to build this house of cards that replicates a scent that you come across in the world. Yeah. It doesn't matter at all if it has that in it, Yeah.
And I guess there's lots of cases where you have to do that anyway, because, certain
things
animal
don't give
products
up their oil.
And ambergris and all these things, you can't use the real thing.
Or, exactly.
Castor, is it
yeah, some people use real castoreum. I won't use anything where an animal is harmed for something. So the only animal thing I feel comfortable with is there's beeswax, sometimes like residue in things. So that I'm okay with that. I'm a big consumer of honey in my life. I love honey. And then there is one called that's Hyrax urine, where, it was Hyrax is thousands of years ago peed in the same spot, and it leaves this thing called Africa stone. I actually have never used it, but I would, like, because it's a fossilized like piss, basically.
Yeah. So I mean, we'll come back and talk about DS and Durga some more, I'm sure. But one of the things I like to do on Man in the Mirror is kind of talk about the world around the person that I'm talking to, and some of their kind of favorite bathroom essentials and things that you use, I guess, outside of perfume. So, I mean, I don't know about you. Like, I got into the perfume bit first, and then I found that I wanted kind of nicer, I don't know, that olfactory thing, and then the quality of those products. And so it led me, down a rabbit hole of, wanting nicer skincare and home fragrance and all these things. And I wonder if that's the case with you. And in terms
it is
of,
not. It is decidedly not. I am just not.
Okay.
I'm not a beauty grooming guy, like, at all. I am passionate about bar soap. I love bar soap. And in America, that's like really what we use. I know in Europe it's different, but I absolutely love good quality bar soap. I love stuff that smells. I love patchouli soap. I love anything that's like cedar, like the really stinky deodar cedar from Himalayas, like strong woody things. I can get down with lavender and stuff too. I don't shave.
So
much.
Would there be a certain one that you'd have to have a certain bar soap in the shower, or are you kind of happy to change it up and
we change it up, but I really always want like my good like patchouli soap. I'm always like trying to find brands that I like, and eucalyptus. I like eucalyptus. I like hippie bath products. If I ever came out with a high-end line, I like hippie bath products that smell like eucalyptus and like being out in the forest and patchouli. Like, that is totally my personal bag. I don't really shave because I have a beard. When I do, I use a electric razor at this point, so I'm not going to use shaving cream anyway. I almost never put on. I don't wash my face with anything other than a bar of soap. Sometimes because like my wife has 4 gajillion products, like her refuse. Like maybe bigger, I would use it. But like even for like if my skin is ever feeling dry, I just use like, olive oil or like argan oil, like on my face. It doesn't have to be a good brand or anything. Same thing. Like, I will say we make a hand soap that is the best product. So perfume is a pyramid, and the top is the highest art and the most useless. It has no use. It's just its art, and that's fragrance. As you go down, it becomes more functional, and the fragrance becomes less important. We make a Big Sur eucalyptus and a Wild Brooklyn lavender hand soap, and I think they're like it's the first incredible useful product we've ever made that like actually has a use. It works so well. And I love that for hand soap. Hand soap I can get into. I don't really I would never use hand cream because I have hyperhidrolysis and my hands sweat all the time, so I don't need cream. But if sometimes I get dry in the winter, I'll just use like anything. Like I'll use pretty much ours or whatever the wife has. I know it's not the most interesting answer, but
no. But it's, I think what's come across in this podcast is that there's a massive continuum, and it's interesting either way. It's not certainly from a point of, everyone should have this big exhaustive routine, because why should you? But I find it just as interesting.
Yeah,
I mean, you're making choices there, and there's conscious choices there anyway, isn't there? The things if you're putting olive oil on, or you're making choices about bar soap, that's just as interesting as
two things I'll say that are adjacent to this that I'm passionate about is, first and foremost, I love the idea of doing what you're supposed to do in the right moment. So that means what we are drinking or consuming when you're at the beach in July in north of Boston, where I'm from, you should be drinking it. I'm not going to be drinking Guinnesses like on the beach, right? I'm going to have, Coronas with a lime. So I love the perfect thing. And I'm definitely really interested in tea is one of my biggest passions. So I'm like a huge tea guy. Whiskey, I definitely like a lot. And pipe tobacco and cigars, I'm really into. Right. So those are adjacent in terms of like really rich aromatic and flavor profiles. Tea is probably has the most differing aromatic profiles in beverages, and pipe tobacco compared to rolling or cigars has such a gamut of flavor compounds that are equal to fragrance.
And being a Brit, I have to ask you, how do you take your tea? Are you into a ton of different teas, or have you got one that you go to?
Yeah, so I have a massive tea collection. Like in the morning, I generally do black tea with milk, right. But I use I make a lot of my own blends. In fact, D.S and Durga just came out with a few. I'm very close friends, or I'm friends with Henrietta Lowell from the Rare Tea Company. Right. She's over in England, and she does the tea at like Noma and Madison Park, and she's a huge tea lady. She wrote this incredible tea book. So she sources teas for us. We have a Brooklyn breakfast tea and a Shire Highlands smoked tea that's from Malawi that's smoked over guava leaves. And we have a beautiful jasmine white tea. So it depends on the kind of tea. In the morning, I generally drink like a stronger kind of, either has a little high mountain, Ceylon, broken leaf, or African on top of like fancy Chinese blacks, or sometimes a little Darjeeling, and I'll just blend it right then and there and then take it with milk. Throughout the day, I drink like oolongs, that do not take milk. And yeah, I love it all. When I come to England, I love Fortnum & Mason. They have a royal blend that's really good. She does the tea at Claridge's. I love the high tea at Claridge's. Yeah.
I've never done that. That sounds great.
Oh, you got to do it, man. It's incredible.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool.
I've never done the Palm Court though at the Ritz. I need to do that sometime.
I'm doing that next year. My mum's taking me for my 50th, so I'm doing like a tea at the Ritz.
Oh yeah,
at the Ritz.
You gotta do it.
I think those rituals.
Yeah. I've done the tea at the Dorchester, which is amazing. And then Liberty and Fortnum have like a tea upstairs that's nice.
Yeah. Final thing I know on the grooming, and it'd be just interesting what your answer is in terms of hair. Have you got a certain? What do you do with your hair?
Yes, I am passionate about my hair product.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked. Okay. I am so into Billy Jealousy Mud.
Right.
And it's matte. It's matte. And it has such great hold, and I couldn't live without it. Like it's definitely my favorite hair product. It's not like fancy at all. Billy Jealousy Mud. I love that.
Billy Jealousy should be a singer. That's a great name. It's like
Billy
Jealousy.
I think it's like a very big mass brand with like a cheesy logo of like a dragon on it. The thing is, a lot of hair products smell fucking awful.
Yeah.
If you're wearing like fancy fragrance that costs a lot of money, and then you're putting on a product that costs like $7, you can't be going to the product that costs $7 for fragrance.
No.
I don't want to smell like that,
And I suppose that there's some perfume brands now that do hair
pump.
Yeah, like
I would do a hair perfume. Because we have this one fragrance that's a fragrance enhancer that like goes over anything, and it would make sense as a hair perfume. We've been talking about that.
Is that I don't know what? Yeah, that would work. That'd be really cool. And just tell me a bit more about, because another thing in the podcast is to talk about appearance and how the guest thinks about their appearance when they look in the mirror. You're a younger man than I am. But, when you look in the mirror, are you someone that sort of thinks about what life stage you're at? Is it, do you think, because some people think, oh, I want to change this or I'll do that, or hark back to a certain period in their life. What do you think when you look in the mirror?
I'm 42, by the way. I think I'm very much in the Marcus Aurelius that we're all going to be dead in 200 years. Yeah. So why worry about anything?
Yeah.
I definitely look older than I did, before. I have kind of young skin, but I have the beard. One thing I'll say is about looking in the mirror. 100% of how I think I look, good or not, is about my hair.
Is it?
It's funny.
That's really interesting.
Like not 99. It's 100%. Like if my hair looks good, everything else looks good to me. However, right now, I've had this haircut, for a long time. That's like longer, slicked back on the top and short on the sides. Mm-hmm. That was very cool back in the day, but now all of a sudden is very uncool, and people make fun of it, call it like an alt-right haircut, or like or like a Nazi haircut.
Oh God.
And I went away with some friends' kids, and one kid is this he's a 14-year-old kid. He's really cool. He looks like he's in the movie Kids. So all these people dress like how we dressed in the 90s, and it's such a trip for me. And he was complaining about his hair, how it looked like very normal and it was all wild before, and he wished. And I was like, oh, but I like when hair is groomed nicely. And he's like, yeah, you have a dad cut. And I was like, oh, right, okay. This thing. So I've been trying to grow it out, but I hate how it looks right now. I'm just going with it. But when I look in the mirror, I do not think it looks good at all,
So that's the downside of your 100% based on hair, is if you're not.
I was like, the way it looks, what looks good on me seems very all of a sudden out of fashion. And so I'm having to rethink all right, I just need to, and I'm more of a style guy than a fashion guy. But at the same time, you don't want to look, I'm just interested now in seeing what happens, letting it grow out and stuff. I've never had long hair. I don't know if I'll have the balls to actually let it go long.
Yeah, mine would, well, it's receding anyway, would just go up rather than long, because it's kind of thick. In terms of D.S and Durga at the moment, obviously you've been releasing new fragrances and new products. I mean, what's sort of in the pipeline next? Is there more home fragrance and more perfume too?
Oh, everything. Yeah. We come out with so much stuff because my mind is very rapid and has lots of things going on. So, we do these studio juices where we come out with,
sort of limited edition things. Yeah.
Yeah, I just hand make 100 bottles, get to do whatever I want. It can be as weird as I want. Doesn't matter, because it's not like a global launch, and Kavi gets to do a crazy label.
Yeah.
So we're doing a bunch of those for, we're about to drop, we'll have already come out with something called the greatest cologne of all time, which I'm really excited about, because actually this is good for grooming, right? There is that cologne smell that the 4711, the old Medici cologne, that's just, super classic and profile. Almost everyone should have one. But I've recently don't think it exists as much. Acqua di Parma makes one, but it doesn't. You just don't see it as much. And I've made it for myself for 10 years, just tinkering, making it better and better and better with the best stuff. So the thing is, the cologne smell, just in case people don't know, is the smell when you mix together rosemary, lavender, orange blossom, like neroli, the distilled one, and citrus. Usually the citrus has to be lemon, bergamot, bitter orange. You need lemon in there. You can or cannot have bergamot, and you need some bitter orange in there. And you could go in other directions with lime and mandarin, and you could add other things to ramp up. But the classic construction are those 5 oils. So I've always made it, and I just made the perfect one. I was like, fuck it, let's just come out with it. It's limited. We made 350 bottles, I think, and it's called the greatest cologne of all time because that's what it is. It's just boom. It's it's kind of funny to call it that.
Yeah,
and
so that sort of Tenacious D kind of vibes with that still, isn't it?
Yeah, we'll see. Hopefully, there's some left by the time this launches.
Yeah, well, I hope so. Because didn't you in the summer, as part of the limited ranges, didn't you have an art space and did a kind of gallery thing?
I did an art show myself, of like 12 crazy fragrances, and I made art for them and stuff at the Olfactory Art Keller, which is a gallery that's just for fragrance down in Chinatown in New York.
But it's so great that you get to express that side of it as well. That
I think it's important, right, to do those things. Like you can't. Not everything can be like all about like selling and commercial. Like you got to keep like the artistry up. Everything we do has to have like artistry behind it,
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And the final thing, David, on the podcast, just again, as it can be as deep or shallow as you want to take it, really, but just the things that bring you joy and happiness. I wonder what they are.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, so I'm a big meditator.
Are you?
Spiritual life is the most important thing to me. So that's definitely the source of all my inspiration and joy. And then, just trying to be the best person and the best like friend and citizen and father and son and father-in-law and business owner that I can be, definitely inspires me just to try to be better every day as a person. I feel a lot of joy in, communing with others and conversing and music and nature and trees and fragrances. I think there's joy in everything if you just observe it, If you observe that thing, like you see the joy behind it.
Well, that's amazing. Well, thank you so much. That's a fantastic note to end on. Really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining me on Man in the Mirror this week.
Thank you, man.
And wishing you all the best. You take care.
You too.
Thanks, David.
Cheers.
My thanks to David there. Obviously, this is an audio medium, so you can't see the visuals, but David and I could see each other as we were recording, and he was in his studio in Brooklyn, and there were all these fascinating looking bottles and samples and vials behind him of no doubt sort of new creations from the brand. I'm sure lots of you know some of their fragrances and candles anyway, but just such a fantastic range that I really recommend you have a look at. There's for the festive season, there's a candle called Portable Christmas Tree, lots of other incredible home fragrance, but also in their main fragrance line, a really popular one at the moment is called I Don't Know What, which has this sort of enhancer quality. It's a real sort of translucent fragrance, but that really kind of amps up other fragrances. It's fantastic. And one that I actually love from a year or so ago, I think, called Grapefruit Generation, which is fabulous. A citrus, but with a kind of deepness and earthiness about it too. Well worth having a look at. If you want to find out more about the brand, you can do. They're at dsandurga.com. That's the letters D and an S, the words A-N-D, so it's D-S-A-N-D, Durga, which is D-U-R-G-A, so it's dsandurga.com, and the same on the socials at DS and Durga. Thanks to David in Brooklyn for taking time to do that with me today. And of course, thanks to you for listening. There's plenty more Man in the Mirror to come, so I'll see you next time. You take care. Bye.